Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to our latest webcast that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly. We're trying to connect you all while we're all stuck at home with some of the leaders of our industry. And so I'm delighted today to be joined by Gavin Tollman, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Trafalgar, one of the leading touring specialists. And we're delighted he's joining us today from Geneva. So thank you for that, Gavin. I'm sure it's been a whirlwind, very difficult last 3 months or so. Perhaps you could just bring us up to speed where you are as a business, also in terms of the number of bookings that you've been able to rebook into perhaps next year, and how your refund process has gone. Just to start us off, please, Gavin.
So, Lucy, it certainly has been extremely trying. 90 days, and I think when I talk that, I think that is easily said for our entire industry. And certainly as a business, we saw a few key things. And if I could, kind of going back to the outset, obviously first and foremost, it was ensuring we were going to repatriate. We had guests all around the world, and including a couple of British people who got stranded actually with one of our trips in South America. And so that was our initial focus. Secondarily, as a business, we also began to see that this was not going to be a short-term initiative. And so our focus began then looking at future bookings. And as I believe you are aware, within our industry, we have now suspended all of our trips all the way globally, all the way through the end of August. All of this was really designed and thought about, Lucy, of how we could ensure that we could maintain business for the long term. As in 2020, we're also celebrating 100 years of TTC. And obviously, so all of our plans are now waylaid, but that's not why I raise it. It is more so we were focused on where are we going to be for the next 100 years. And so as part of that, we started to see then what we wanted to do is for the longevity, and what we really understand is the importance of cash flow within our business. And ready for our agent partners too. And so we began working hand in hand with our agent partners to ensure that what we were going to do is try and issue future travel credits for people to travel with us for years to come, and initiate a number of policies allowing them to take those travel credits all the way for travel through 2022, put them on any other TTC brand if they wanted to, or they could even transfer them to others. And that initiative has been remarkably successful. Right. And so really, to our agent partners that have been part of that, we say thank you. Obviously, our guests who understood and wanted to be and ensure that they could have their future travel plans, they have done so as well. And when I look at it, it's been an unbelievable journey of seeing how, as an industry, we can come together and we can work together. And that has been one of the great rewards. And so, to all of our agent partners, when we're already looking at the enormous success of the foundations for our business of 2021, as well as all the way into 2022, it bodes well for where we will be going in our future.
Okay. And so what can you put a percentage on the number of bookings that you did manage to save, Gavin, the ones that you've managed to move into those future years?
So it's in excess of 70%.
Wow.
Lucy.
Okay, that's great.
And so it really has been. And as I said, it's, Lucy, everyone understands that we have been at a time of, and to use the word unprecedented is almost to diminish what is exactly. And this came out of nowhere. And when you look at all the industries in the world, certainly the one that has been so dramatically impacted has been ours, that of travel. And, I saw some statistics from WTTC, and, they are talking about within our industry, Lucy, that of losing over 100 million job losses around the world, directly attributed to our industry. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. And, when you frame that around the fact that, our historical growth in 2019 as an industry was 3.5%, and that of the rest of the world was 2.5. We have over-indexed overall growth. And for us to now have literally, as borders shut, our industry come to a grinding halt, is one where together, we've now kind of cauterized the wound. All of our focus now is where do we go for our future? And to me, that's what's exciting.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned that you've paused your operations up to the end of August. How confident are you that you will be able to resume or restart then from September onwards, or will you look again and there may be further cancellations?
So, it's so unknown.
Yeah.
If I look, obviously, June 15th was a very important day for Europe. We opened so many borders, and I look to France as a perfect example, where on Sunday they made a decision to open up all the shops, everything which wasn't scheduled to occur until 2 weeks later. So things move and are at such an accelerating rate. So we've been very cautious to ensure that we don't make decisions that we will regret. So everything is being done almost on a day-to-day basis because of the speed of change.
But for a touring business specifically, I know you say the tourism industry has been one of the hardest sectors that have been hit, but within travel, touring, I mean, it's so complex. You're crossing borders all the time. You've got some tours that take in several countries. You've got the other issue that you're putting lots of people together in a, well, we'll say a confined space, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But, it seems to me, or perhaps to the outsider, that this could be quite a difficult sector of travel to resume and find a workable way, to get it back on its feet. So I wonder if you can talk to me about that, even if we, I understand you perhaps don't know a date, but you must be working behind the scenes in what you're doing to reassure customers that touring will be a safe option for a holiday going forward.
So I'll answer the question for you in two ways. So first of all, what became very obvious to us was that of how domestic travel was going to come first, and the power of it has been that we were one of the first companies to launch a domestic series in New Zealand, and in fact went live on the domestic program the same day that they announced that they were now COVID-free.
Wow.
And so, and having, these are trips for the local market, Lucy, and in many of our destinations, what we saw was an enormous opportunity to showcase our expertise. And when I talk about our expertise, to answer your question in a different way, it's just the way it just depends on the lens you're looking through. And as an industry, and certainly within TTC, the way we've approached this is how we can be the leaders, the guiding light of change. And so, first of all, what we've been is working hand in hand with WTTC to create protocols for the travel industry itself. We have representation on the board, and we are actually going out of our way to define what the future of travel needs to look like. On our trips themselves, what we've gone out of our way to do is ensure we can actually leverage our knowledge, that expertise, and give our guests the confidence, and our agent partners the confidence that they should travel with us because we've done all the hard work. What does that mean, Lucy? And at a high level for where it stands at the moment. Number one, what are we doing is we have created a training program for all of our travel directors to really understand what they should be doing in a different way in today's day and age. Number two, we've worked with our drivers, setting specific protocols of what they and how they should be approaching. And I'm talking on things of when you arrive at hotels, when you arrive at sites, what we should be doing, how we get on and off the coach. We've set hygiene protocols of cleanliness of coach, how we engage with people, including, Lucy, how many people at this time, and how many people sit on a coach, Lucy, is very much so being determined by the sites we're seeing, where we are going, and what the constraints are. Here in Switzerland, up until 2 weeks ago, we couldn't assemble more than 5 people. Now we can have 30 people assembled. So if we are bringing a group, we can bring a group of up to 30.
Sorry, Gavin, to interrupt, but do they still have to be socially distanced? I mean, I know you're saying there's 30, but would they be able to sit next to each other on a
Yes,
coach?
they can. But what we are doing is people who are traveling together sit together. Those who don't, we are distancing. Single travelers will always have a seat next to them. I mean, these are some of the protocols that we are putting in place.
Fine.
We're currently investigating the opportunity to have a third person who we have our travel directors actually having a well-being director, someone who goes out of their way to ensure everyone's bags when they are brought down that they're cleaned, when they go, when we are handed, calling ahead to restaurants to make sure we can social distance from others when we're going into restaurants. So we are looking at all different variables, working and how we engage with suppliers.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because it would be quite an extra burden if the travel director had to do all of those checks as well. And do you see that if you were to bring that role in, Gavin, would that be a permanent thing that you would look to have going forward? Because, even if this virus is contained, we may see other outbreaks, other pandemics. I mean, is that a permanent position, do you think, or is it temporary?
Certainly it's permanent in the COVID environment, Lucy.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing we all recognize is what is good today might not be there tomorrow, and to me, where I'm so proud of the entire team that I work with has been our agility. Being able to move and adjust to whatever the world it has thrown at us, and the power of what we do has been so rewarding, Lucy. And when I look at the engagement from our travel directors who've clearly been unemployed, as well as some of the experts, all these people whose livelihood depended on travelers coming from around the world going to showcase the beauty of the countries we go to. The fact that all evaporated, when you looked at our social media channels, Lucy, and you started to see how our past guests were engaging, wanting to know how people they had met, how are you, what are you doing? It really touched me profoundly because it showed the true strength of humanity during this crisis.
Yeah. Just taking you back to the changes in the protocols. I mean, some of the things you've talked about there are things that you can do as a business because it's, your team, your vehicles, etc. How can you control the experience in destination? I know you have very good relationships on the ground. You've got, DMCs and things, but you offer some fantastic experiences. You go to some iconic sites, and I know you sometimes get exclusive access to places. So will we see more of that? How will you make sure that the actual experience in destination, in all these wonderful cities and places that you go to, is secure, as well as the bit you absolutely control?
So we have defined specific standards. And what we do is we have worked, and I'm literally talking about conversations with the Vatican I mean, that's the degree we're having. What's been interesting is some of the conversations we're having with the Eiffel Tower. All of them, those people who are reliant on travel, get it.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have been extremely candid, Lucy, talking about how important this is. And our position is a different one. We did not believe that, the future of travel is not about cutting prices. It's about putting in place the well-being of not only our guests, but the people who we work with each and every day, as well as the visited too. And if everyone takes this seriously, we can achieve it, and that's really what we've been doing. And those, unfortunately, who did not want to come on the journey, we told them we wouldn't come anymore, Lucy. So we made that shift. And but I must tell you,
you're expecting destinations or places of tourist attractions to make sure that they do what's necessary to keep your guests safe, and if they can't or won't, then you won't visit those places anymore.
But the key variable here is we took the onus on helping define what that looked like. We just didn't say be safe, right? We have really looked at it, and that's where having an individual like a well-being director who understands those protocols to call and make sure, because it doesn't happen organically, it requires conscious thought in order to bring in these changes. So the answer is yes. And if they do, we are not going to go to a place where we're putting anyone at risk.
And in terms of some of these places, I imagine some of them will have to restrict the numbers that they've previously been allowing in on a daily basis, let's say. And to companies like yourselves, where you've got economies of scale, you're a big multinational business, does that put you in a better or a stronger position, because you can make sure a Trafalgar guest can, will still get the access, whereas other smaller companies might not?
So, the way we've always approached business, and obviously my grandfather was the founder of this business, Lucy, and I'll tell you a wonderful story of, and you know our chairman today, Stanley Tollman, and one of our greatest foundations, Lucy, as a business, is this story. And Stanley, our chairman, had just opened his first hotel and restaurant, and he was looking across the street, and his was empty. He had 2 guests in it, and the restaurant across the street was full. And he turned to my grandfather and he said, what am I doing wrong? And he said, don't worry about what any of the other competitors are. Look after your 2 customers. And here we are moving multi-million guests a year, but always worrying about what we do, not what anyone else can do, Lucy. And so our belief, when we understood this, was actually to look at ourselves and see that the world was shifting and changing on us. And as a business, we had to adjust to. And that is really what we've done. And so to your original question, what does that mean to us? We took that responsibility on ourselves. We have obviously reached our hand out to WTTC to assist them in putting together some of the protocols for our industry, but obviously working with many of our suppliers. For us, it's that collaboration which is key, because without travel, there's no travel industry, and they all need to understand that. And the fact is, the world has shifted on us, and now they need to adjust too. And so we've defined that, and as I said at the outset, the beauty of it is to see the level of engagement, and those who do adapt will be those who can thrive in this what we are all beginning to call the new normal.
Okay, let's talk about your customer for a second. You mentioned just a minute ago that low prices wouldn't be the driver. It was about reassuring people that they're going to be safe, which is interesting, because in other sectors, the people I've spoken to in cruise, I mean, they are predicting there's going to be some pretty good prices coming in to try and encourage people back on ships. But you're saying that the price issue is you won't be offering cheap prices as a kind of magnet to get people to come back.
I would tell them they are mistaken, and all of our research, all of our guests we talk to, their number one question to us is their well-being. And if you are going to look after everyone's well-being, Lucy, it is going to cost money, right? And it is going to cost more. And I think if I look forward and you said to me, what do I anticipate the future? People obviously are clearly going to travel again, but they will travel less. And so their investment in their travel will be first and foremost to make sure, have you taken care of me? Right? Number two, what are the experiences you're going to get? And what are you going to come home with those wonderful memories from travel itself? And clearly there's a value proposition within that, but it is not one of trying to drop your prices so low that you are trying to encourage people to go in that way. I mean, to me, that is short-sighted and is one that I would strongly encourage others in our industry not to head down that path.
Okay, very interesting. Now, in terms of your product range, now you already mentioned there that you'd been quick to bring out a domestic range for New Zealand, but in terms of just your general product, do you see that changing in any way? I mean, there has been some surveys, people saying that actually going into a big busy city might not be exactly what they want to do, which of course is what you do a lot of, because you take people to some of these fantastic places. Mm-hmm. So do you see the mix of your tours changing at all?
So what I tell you is where we are today. I don't know what's going to look like in 6 months' time.
That's fine, I understand.
So certainly looking at our search traffic, it is very much so around the open spaces. We are definitely seeing an enormous shift towards the national parks in the United States. The Rockies in Canada. You are definitely seeing that. We are currently working on a new series with Switzerland, Tourism Switzerland, because once again, on research of just over a week ago, Switzerland is now seen as the safest country to visit. I'm very lucky to live here. Yes. But what does that mean is there is no doubt that there is a shift towards people seeing open spaces of where they want to go. But that is where we are now, Lucy. It could shift just as quickly in a different direction. And so we continue to keep all options open. But even in where we are going into cities, we are looking to ensure that our guests do have that social distancing in place, that we are working with our hotels, we are working with the suppliers. So wherever we go, their well-being has been meticulously thought out.
Okay. And do you think in terms of your experiences that you offer when people are then in that city, you will, I mean, I know you've done it, I slightly asked this earlier, but you have these exclusive experiences, don't you? You'll have dinner in the Vatican after that, our hours, or so will we see you and maybe touring companies in general trying to offer more experiences that are just for the group that are, so they're not in amongst all the crowds? Do you think that's a trend we may see?
Well, we've seen that over the years, and it's one of the things I love most about what I do, Lucy. Is as I always say, it's when you imagine driving down the road, you see the fence, and you never know, and you see the gate, you never know what's beyond the gate. We are the ones who open the gate for you. And as an independent traveler, you can't just walk in. And for me, that is the power of what we do, is we can actually make those deep, rich connections that it would be extremely difficult to do on your short holiday in going to a place. And so, yes, we are definitely looking for more of those experiences. But that is not a new trend. We're just working with our suppliers to make sure that we can do more of them.
More of it, okay. All right. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Gavin, that TTC has been a real leader, hasn't it, in responsible tourism, sustainability. You've had your Tread Right Foundation. I wondered how easy it's going to be as we try desperately to rebuild this industry, to maintain that focus on something which has been so important. I mean, there's schools of thought, aren't there, that's probably made us all a little bit more aware and more responsible whilst we've been in lockdown. We've seen, some benefits of less travel. But I wondered, if you can maintain that focus as you're trying as a business, to get back on track.
It is one of the things I am most excited by, is and truly to see how, as an outcome of this dark period, humanity has really stepped into the forefront, and people are truly trying to make a difference to, and I believe the trend of what we've always said, and as you know, Tread Right, the name was very carefully chosen because we wanted to tread correctly in the places we visited and making travel a force for good. And because the power of what travel can do is, obviously so impactful to the small communities which currently are missing it. And when you think about the fact that over 10% of GDP is basically evaporated right now, making that positive impact to people has become an obvious one. So yes, number one, we have seen what a privilege it is to travel. We have also seen the power of what we do to go in, and how travel can be that powerful force and make a difference in the communities. And what we will be doing is only taking that further, because we do believe this is not a trend. This is an imperative. And now, you and I have had this conversation in the past. We began doing this because for us, we're now fourth generation business. And for us, one of the saddest things, Lucy, was the possibility or the jeopardy of future generations not being able to do what we took for granted. And we decided as a family, and was really driven by our CEO, Brett, to actually make this difference and be this force for good. And what you will see in each and everything we do moving forward, this is not just going to be a part of what we do. I believe it's even going to be more so the driving force. And what is so wonderful to see now is, whether it's governments, whether it's our guests, whether it's our travel agent partners, everyone now gets it. And so we are no longer having to do a pitch to try and get people to join us. We are now getting the phone calls and inviting us to come part of the process. And that is the power of it, Lucy, and something that will be one of the greatest outcomes of the post-COVID era.
Yeah, and it will extend presumably to customers as well. They'll make decisions on who they travel with based on, their sort of social responsibility, perhaps.
Well, and certainly for us, those are the guests we would like to travel with us. Those people who actually see it, and going home knowing that their travel dollar made a difference to somebody else is unbelievably powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Gavin, I'm conscious of time, but I do want to just touch on the UK market. We're going out now to all the UK travel agents who will be watching this. I just wondered if you could just give us an update on how the UK market is. Are you getting any interesting new bookings from the UK? Or, are there any sort of trends emerging in this market that you have been able to look at? I know you
absolutely. And Lucy, the UK is an enigma to us, because all of Europe wants to welcome the British. But obviously you have instituted, or your government has instituted, constraints. You have put in place this 14-day quarantine, which actually has shut down travel.
Yeah.
And certainly for us, it's insanity. There is no doubt, looking at our web trends again, there is an enormous interest from the British market for people to travel, but until and get out of the island of Britain. But the challenge is one that until they remove the quarantine, we are fighting this insane 14-day quarantine. We are really fighting the wrong battle. And Lucy, I just don't understand it. Because really I reach out because living in Switzerland, we have seen the power of testing and tracing. You talk about the app. You've got to just get the fundamentals in place, and it is not to undermine the seriousness of this virus, but the fact is we can all live with it if we do some of the fundamentals. And certainly when I look to our agency partners, they should expect that there will be demand. There will be demand to travel abroad, and certainly sitting here in the in Switzerland, where you could come and visit me tomorrow, right? You would unfortunately have the restraint of 14 days of quarantine once you go home.
Back.
But you'd be, and all of Europe is already open to you. And so, but we all understand tracing, we all understand testing when you get here. And, these are some of the protocols we've really been trying to work on with WTTC, because testing and tracing becomes fundamental to the restoration of travel.
Yeah. And you're saying the UK is very much behind on that, and that's stifling our demand, stifling our recovery.
Well, I don't believe it's stifling the ability for people to travel. People want to go.
Yes.
British people want to go, but it's ridiculous to even think that someone would go on a 10-day holiday and then come home and be put in quarantine for 14 days afterwards. I mean, it's and obviously we see the airlines leading this charge, and I think all of us within our business should be outspoken, because it's just nonsensical, because there are other ways of doing it. And for whatever reason, the government is just doing it the wrong, certainly my perspective, is just doing it the wrong way around.
And the other ways of doing it, you're referring to these air corridors that they could be exploring with certain destinations to make sure.
There are corridors you could be exploring, and obviously those are opening up everywhere. Today, for me, from Geneva, I can travel absolutely open. I can drive to France and be in France with absolutely zero constraints. What everybody's done, though, is looked at the similar way of approaching it. And, so you do see countries with similar levels, and it's once people come here, it's just making sure that they're not bringing in the virus when they come and or when they return home. But
so
there are
other more testing at airports and more tracking and tracing, as you say.
And in Geneva, in our office here, it was so powerful to see. We did have another individual within our office get the virus. To see how the government approached it, Lucy, working with us collaboratively to make sure where they traced all those people she was with were all put into quarantine for 14 days. We then had to shut the office, do some deep cleaning, but it was so easy and simple to do. And we were back in business in a couple of days. But it requires a different way of thinking. And, the analogy I've used is for travel. Post 9/11, all of us very quickly adapted to the additional security measures. Now, all I'm saying is there are going to be other health protocols that are going to become part of our way of travel. But so you might have to go to the airport, you might have to get tested a couple of days before you go, but all of us can live with that if we're just told what to do. And and there's that uniformity, and that we really should all be working towards. And what you currently are enduring in Britain just is, as I said, it's just nonsensical within the big picture. So hopefully they do find common sense, because one of the things I do think you would see very quickly is British people traveling again. And with all the protocols in place, I know, and we've been speaking to our team there, particularly around a demand for Greece. And not just beach, I'm not talking beach holidays, and Greece is basically wanted to roll out the welcome mat. You are speaking about the Portugals of the world. I am talking about the Switzerlands of the world, the Frances of the world. But it is going to require a change.
Okay, and with that in mind, just finally, Gavin, what would be your message then to agents who perhaps were seeing a bit of demand? You're absolutely right. We get reports from agents who were seeing, a few green shoots. It was looking more positive. Then the quarantine was announced, and they said it literally just shut off, turned off the tap instantly. So if you're, if you're a travel agent watching this who is perhaps as frustrated as you are, but they have got to keep their business alive and they want to service their customers and they want to meet that demand, what would be your message?
You've got to remain engaged. And this too shall pass, Lucy. It is one of an understanding. And so to me, I would do a few key things. Number one is ensuring you remain engaged with your customers. Making sure you know what they want, whatever that takes, making sure you are speaking to them to let them know that you are around and you are there for them when they can travel.
Yeah.
Number two is I would strongly recommend to them to make sure they are reading up on who's doing what.
Right?
The evolution of such is I can tell them the following. Right? Their customers, when they are ready to travel, well-being is going to be on the forefront. And they should know who they should recommend and what those companies have done to ensure that their customers' well-being is on the forefront. Number three is once they are making bookings, they should be thinking about some items such as insurance, and certainly looking at insurance which do cover repatriation if people do get sick, because there are going to be cases, right? And the thing is, it's not the end of the world as long as you know what you can do about it. If someone is, they're not coming home quickly, so they need to have insurance to make sure they're covered. Right. And those are the eventualities. But travel is the most exciting thing all of us do. And so we must not lose that passion. It is going to come back, Lucy. And so all I can say to them is stay the course. It'll be back.
All right. Well, what a brilliant and positive note to end on. Gavin, thank you so much for your time this morning. We're so grateful. We're sorry you've had to postpone your 100-year celebrations. We look forward to you being able to do that at another time.
Well, 101 years is just as good.
Just sounds great, doesn't it? Okay.
Exactly.
Well, we wish you all the best, and thank you very much for taking the time to speak to the UK industry today.
My pleasure, Lucy, and wonderful to see you looking so well, and thank you for all you do as well.
Thank you.